Arabica coffee rallied 2.3% on concerns that future supply could be tight. Joining me to discuss this is Paul Davis, Portfolio Manager at Holland Capital in London. So Paul, what is your view on the coffee market at present?
Well, we tend to believe that actually on the Arabica market. I think there's quite a large divergence of views between what the crop will be in Brazil over the outturn of the next 12 months. Our view tends to be a little bit more negative, perhaps, than the average. We're concerned that the drought from the last 12, 18 months ago has done a little bit more damage than people realize. And we're expecting to see prices improve and firm up over the course of the next 6 months. Looking ahead on Robusta, we sort of see that market as being perhaps the balance sheet being not quite as tight. But at the same time, when we're looking at the outlook of that, particularly with El Nino in Southeast Asia, we're a little bit concerned about how the future price on that over the next 12 to 18 months is going to pan out. So overall, we're a little friendly.
Arabica coffee is currently trading at around $134 a pound. Is this a good time to buy? And in your opinion, why?
Yeah, I think it is a good time. I think for industry and for roasters, I think generally it is. I think particularly for buyers that are looking at it in dollar terms or hard currency terms. As I say, our view is a little bit more friendly than perhaps the average because we believe that the price in dollars has been suffering quite a negative pull from the great strength of the dollar, but also tremendous weakness that we've been observing in the real. The Brazilian real has been under a huge amount of pressure the last 6 months. That's led to a lot of overselling, and we do think that if the balance sheet is a little bit tight, that one has to watch this because the specs are quite short in the market. And therefore, our view is it is a good time to buy right now.
How will higher prices affect coffee shops? The profit margin on a cup of coffee is already quite large. Surely they don't need to up their prices. What do you think?
We've seen a really, really very serious decline in prices over the last 6 to 9 months in both Robusta and Arabica. We think that the coffee roasters in the industry generally have been running down cover from much higher levels and probably improving profit margins gradually over the last 3 or 4 months, particularly the last 3 or 4. So we would be very surprised if we saw any real impact. We're not talking about a major ticket item in terms of a frost or some huge event in coffee, but I just think I think we've probably seen in dollar terms a slide towards perhaps a slightly overdone move to the downside. And I think the next 6 to 12 months is probably more likely to see firmer and firmer prices. But I don't think sufficiently to cause any real upset into the retail market.
And finishing up, what is your outlook for the commodity heading into 2016?
Well, as I say, I think there's a couple of concerns in coffee. I think the two markets have got a very different balance sheet right now. I think Arabica, time will tell over the course of the next 6 to 9 months whether the tightness that we believe is probably underlying has been a little bit hidden and flattered by the weak real and the pace of exports is going to start showing its face in the course of the next 6 months. And if that is to happen, I think going into 16, we may be looking at a much tighter position in Arabica, and we would expect to see prices improving at least for the first 6 months into 2016. While we, at that point, probably examine where the 16-17 crops are going to look like, which would probably be fairly significantly improved. But we do have a lot of time before that happens, and therefore there is a certain element of risk. In Robusta, it's a more interesting position because I think the market here is actually quite reflective of an overhang, which we have. But we've got concerns going into 2016, particularly in Asia, because we've never really seen the impact of El Nino into Vietnam. And we are concerned about the water table and the amount of moisture for the current crop coming forward. And if there is some risk in there, I think we are going to start seeing that around the Christmas period and the period around Tet. And therefore, 2016 might develop into a slightly tighter position. So it's a little hard to tell on Robusta right now, but I think there are some risks going forward. So I think given where prices are historically, I think the message really for the roasters is to proceed with caution and not be too concerned about, missing perhaps the next 5% on the downside, and to consider that really these prices perhaps are going to look very much cheaper 6 months from now. our advice is 2016, be a little careful.
Well, thank you very much for your comments, Paul. That is all for this installment of Commodities Corner. Join us again on Thursday when my colleague Monica Gibson will be back with more. Goodbye for now.